Everybody knows that informational interviews are critical in your job search as well as your career development, especially now in today's environment with the global pandemic making hiring very difficult now. It is very, very important to get your informational interviews handled. Today's video is actually on the common questions that I get from a lot of my students about how to conduct informational interviews and my answers into a lot of these common questions. So if you're having problems with your informational interview, this is the video for you. Hey, this is Michael with Michael's Business English. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Rincon. I'm a former six-figure data analyst turned ESL instructor and career coach, and I support English language learners improve their career development through communications and language training. Okay, this is the third and final part of my informational interviews Q&A. This is because, again, this went on too long, and I do have a couple more questions I want to answer before I end this topic. So just be aware this is the third and final one. If you haven't seen the first two, make sure you go back and watch those because those are going to be really helpful for you. And I don't want you to miss out on some really important topics. Okay, so another question that I've gotten with regards to informational interviews, how to conduct them, what's the best way to go, how to find people. The best thing to do is just go on LinkedIn and search for people. Like literally just go search on your network for people who have the job title you want. Nothing special there, nothing fancy. Look for the people who have the title, look for the people at the company who have a similar background to you have. That would be very helpful too. So for example, if you found someone who had a non-traditional background, like how they went from one industry to another, that would be much more beneficial to you as opposed to like, oh, I see you're at this company, right? So remember what I said earlier in one of our first videos was that when I started doing informational interviews, I found that I was getting answers that didn't resonate and didn't make sense for me. So for example, because I was talking to the people who I was talking to executives who had a traditional career path and they lived a traditional lifestyle. These are the guys who thought that, working 60 plus hours a week makes perfect sense. Now I was not talking to people who live a work-life balance. You know what I mean? Like the idea of working 60 plus hours, staying till past 6 o'clock just because the boss wants to keep up appearances. That's not attractive to me. That's not attractive to my lifestyle. And what I've learned from talking to new people now, talking to people who are in different industries outside of the banks, is that there is a life outside of work. Right? There are people out there who've done what I've done, and they've shifted from a traditional background to a non-traditional background. And so, if you're having challenges, like just remember that you want to make sure that you are looking for people who have similar backgrounds to you. Like I would be very mindful of who you're reaching out to, be selective, and make sure you're looking at their profile because especially if you're going for specific target companies, there are plenty of people that you can build connections with. And one more point I want to make here too, like don't just like if you have a dream list of companies that I know some people recommend, I highly recommend you build multiple people into that list. Right? Don't just say I'm going to talk to one person and if I don't get a response from them, it's over. No, what's going to be very powerful is you have lots of endorsements. So going back to what I said earlier, is that the most powerful thing you can do is not go directly to the hiring manager, but get an endorsement from someone the hiring manager knows, the hiring manager actually talks to and engages with, because that's going to be something that I'm going to take this person seriously now. It's really powerful if you can get endorsements, not just from people that the hiring manager likes, but multiple endorsements from people the hiring manager likes. So just keep that in mind. Like, don't just do like one person from one company. That's pretty risky, and you don't know what's going to happen. Instead, make a list of people and prioritize based on who you think will be the best fit and see how they respond to your initial outreach. Okay, so one final question to end this video, which is about information interviews. Should I apply for the job first and then request informational interviews, or should I apply for informational interviews, reach out to people in the company, and then go for the job application? And the answer is you can do whatever you want. And what I mean by that is that I've seen multiple career coaches as well as other resources suggest that applying for jobs online, I'll tell you, like I agree wholeheartedly that applying for jobs online generally is not a good use of your time. Just being honest. There are some exceptions to that. I'll cover that in a minute, but generally speaking, what I suggest and what most coaches would suggest is that you should focus on building informational interviews first. And the reason that's important, there's two reasons. First of all, if you do an informational interview and you go in there seeking like help on your industry and looking for advice and showing that you can be of service without asking for a job, really important. Like you, without like saying, "Can you give me a job offer?" What will happen is that someone who you talk to, a few things can happen. One, they can ignore you. Two, they can say yes and they'll do the informational interview and then they won't actually do anything. But what's also possible is that one of a few things, right? So one, they can refer you to the company they work for. They can refer you to the team they're on. That's a possibility. That's probably what we're all thinking about. Two, which I think is even more valuable, is that they can refer you to multiple teams and multiple companies. So, as an example, I actually did a podcast interview with a guy who's a marketing manager for a company called, Maya. And I didn't think anything of it. I'd never done I had done, one podcast interview last year, and it was my first time doing it. So, I'm still new to the podcasting stuff, and I didn't think anything of it. I thought it'd be fun to do, so I did it. A few months later, I got an invite from someone. It turned out to be a referral from the guy I did a podcast interview with. Mind blown, right? So, see, a lot of us were so fixated on like this one, like that job, just like the immediate job, the one job we can get right now. The thing is, there are tons of jobs out there. There's tons of opportunities out there. You just don't know. So that's why I highly suggest, like, instead of like applying for a specific job and then going for informational interviews, you do the opposite. You do the informational interview first, and then you start applying for jobs. The second thing to keep in mind is that the reason you should apply for informational interviews before you apply for jobs is that if you apply for the job, let me back up. If you go to an informational interview first and you have an informational interview, you can get critical data that you need to enhance your application. So for example, when you submit your resume, you don't have time. You have a limited amount of data based on the job description of what you should enter into your resume. What should be on your resume? What are the key things? What are the key things they're working on? When you submit a cover letter, like, you only have limited data. Imagine how much more powerful it is when you do an application, whether you apply online or you send a resume or whatever you do, that you can say, first of all, like, now you can customize it specifically to that role and say, hey, after speaking to, especially for the cover letter, right? After speaking to so-and-so on so-and-so, like, let's say speaking to Samantha on the product team, I realized that the 3 key PIs you need help with right now are building new products, increasing customer retention. Like, I don't know product development, so I'm making things up. But like, based on my conversation with this, I was able to, this is how I think I could help you. This is how you can customize your cover letter. With that being said, there are exceptions to this, and I'll give you an example. When I was looking to teach English overseas, eventually I got a job offer with a university in China. Let me tell you a little backstory about that. So I did not go for informational interviews first. I applied for jobs online on jobs boards, and that's like crazy. Why would you apply for jobs even though you keep saying you network? That's because teaching English is a different beast than trying to get a job in the US. And what I mean by that is that there's so much demand that I can easily get a 20% interview rate. And I did this because I actually reported everything down. I tracked all the jobs I applied for. I put it in a very basic spreadsheet, put the day I applied, the day I followed up, results, all that stuff. I tracked everything. And what I found was that for every 5 jobs, 1 would turn into an interview. So I didn't feel the need to go and do like informational interviews and try and schedule things, because it's pretty easy just to go apply for jobs online. Once I had the interview, then I actually reach out to people at the school so that I can do informational interviews and say, hey, I'd like to learn more about your school because I'm actually got an interview with the director next week. Anything you could tell me would be very helpful. And it was very simple. It wasn't like a 15-minute phone call. It was just an email. I just asked a couple of broad questions and just said, hey, what can you tell me about this? Like, yeah, I love this school. Here's what I love, blah, blah, blah. And when I went to the actual interview, I showed up saying that I spoke to a few teachers, and this is what they told me, and he loved that. Now, here's the thing. Like, if you've done informational interviews before you apply for the job or after you apply for the job, it's more or less irrelevant because when it comes to the interview, because by the time you get to the actual interview with the employer, with the boss, you've already done the informational interview. But again, for most of us, I highly suggest you do informational interviews before you apply for jobs. Like I just said, because you're going to have a higher chance of getting referrals to multiple roles as opposed to just getting a referral for that one job, which they may be like, oh, we're actually going through a hiring freeze right now. We're not looking to hire, or you don't have the right degree or whatever. They could shut you down much faster if you go requesting informational interviews because you applied for one specific job. So just keep that in mind. So that's what I highly, highly suggest when you're doing informational interviews, you actually go for those before you apply for jobs. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this was helpful for you. Please leave a comment below letting me know what you learned from this, what questions you still have. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. If you haven't signed up to my email list, make sure you do. I'm sending out emails daily now with helpful career development content, strategies you can use right now that you can use immediately to help you with your job search and your career development. All right, thanks so much, guys. I'll see you guys in the next video.